I was 7 when my father married Victoria, and 13 when I realized she was systematically erasing every trace of my mother from our lives. By 16, I understood that in her perfect family portrait, I was nothing more than an unwanted smudge she couldn't quite remove. "Sarah, darling," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "wouldn't you be more comfortable eating in the kitchen? The dining room is for family." That's how it always started, with small suggestions that grew into unspoken rules. When her real children came along, twins Marcus and Sophia, the divide became even more pronounced. They got new clothes, I got hand-me-downs. They went to private school, I was sent to public school. They were given trust funds, I was told to get a job. My father, once my hero and protector, became a silent observer in his own home. He'd avoid my eyes across the dinner table, pretend not to hear when Victoria made her cutting remarks. Sometimes I caught him staring at me with a mixture of guilt and helplessness, but he never spoke up. "Your mother would be so disappointed," Aunt Claire, my mom's sister, said during one of her rare visits. Victoria had accidentally scheduled a spa day when Aunt Claire came by. "Emily was a fighter and she raised you to be one too." My mother, Emily Parker, the brilliant investment banker who'd built her own firm from nothing, only to die in a car accident when I was 6. I had fragments of memories. Her perfume, her laugh, the way she'd explain stock markets using my stuffed animals as visual aids. "Your mother left you more than just memories," Aunt Claire said that day, sliding a small key across the table. "When you turn 21, come see me." I kept that key hidden in my jewelry box, right next to the only photo of my mother that Victoria hadn't managed to misplace. It became my talisman, a promise of something more. Life in the Harrison household followed Victoria's carefully scripted routine. She hosted lavish dinner parties where I was conveniently sent to my room with a headache. She organized family vacations where I was left behind to study. Every holiday became an exercise in subtle exclusion. But I wasn't just sitting quietly in my room all those years. I was watching, learning, and planning. Victoria might have seen me as nothing more than an inconvenience, but she forgot one crucial detail. I was my mother's daughter. While Victoria bragged about Marcus's C+ in economics and Sophia's participation in school plays, I was graduating top of my class. While she planned their extravagant Sweet 16 party, I was starting my first investment portfolio with money saved from tutoring jobs. The summer before college, I discovered something interesting. Victoria had a gambling problem. Not the obvious kind with casinos and cards, but the sophisticated kind involving risky stock trades and leveraged investments. She'd been playing with my father's money, making increasingly desperate bets to maintain their lavish lifestyle. I started college at the State University, the only one Victoria would agree to pay for. But I wasn't just studying business and finance. I was building. Every summer internship, every part-time job, every connection I made was carefully chosen. Victoria thought I was working as a bank teller. In reality, I was learning the intricacies of real estate law from one of the city's top firms. When I turned 21, I visited Aunt Claire as promised. The key unlocked a safety deposit box containing 2 things: a letter from my mother and a USB drive. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm no longer there to protect you. But I've made sure you have everything you need to protect yourself." The USB drive contained details of my mother's hidden investments, accounts, properties, and shares she'd accumulated over years, all carefully concealed through a network of shell companies. She'd been brilliant, my mother, planning for every contingency. "The greatest power," she wrote, "is the one others don't know you have." It took me 3 years to fully understand and take control of my inheritance. 3 years of careful planning, of smiling through Victoria's jabs, of watching her dig our family deeper into debt while maintaining her facade of perfection. Then came the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Victoria's latest investment scheme had backfired spectacularly, leaving them with massive loans coming due. The house, my childhood home, the one filled with my last memories of my mother, was their only remaining substantial asset. They needed to sell quickly and quietly. Through one of my shell companies, I arranged to buy it at a price they couldn't refuse. Victoria was so desperate she didn't even bother investigating the mysterious buyer beyond the surface. I signed the papers on a Tuesday. The deed to my childhood home, now legally mine, felt heavy in my hands. I scheduled the revelation for Thanksgiving, Victoria's favorite holiday, for showing off her perfect family. The day arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly shopping budget, though she'd never know it. Years of being forced to eat in the kitchen had taught me patience. Today that patience would pay off. Victoria outdid herself with the decorations. Crystal glasses sparkled on the dining room table, fine china gleamed, and the silverware looked like it had been polished twice. The twins, home from their mediocre colleges, lounged in designer clothes bought with credit cards that were nearly maxed out. "Sarah dear," Victoria's sickeningly sweet voice cut through the air as guests began arriving. "Would you help Maria in the kitchen? And you can have your dinner in there too. We're a bit short on space at the main table." I saw my father wince slightly, but as usual he said nothing. The twins snickered behind their hands. Our relatives, mostly Victoria's side of the family, pointedly looked away. "Actually," I said, pulling an envelope from my bag, "I think we need to discuss the seating arrangements." Victoria's perfect smile faltered slightly. "Sarah, don't be difficult. You know your place." "Yes," I replied calmly, "I do." I opened the envelope and pulled out the deed to the house. "My place as the owner of this house is at the head of the table." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went through a fascinating array of expressions: confusion, disbelief, horror. My father dropped his wine glass, red liquid seeping into the expensive carpet Victoria had insisted on buying last year. But this was just the beginning. Victoria had no idea that I now own not just the house, but also all of their outstanding loans. Thanksgiving dinner was about to become very interesting indeed. Victoria recovered first, her perfectly Botoxed face twisting into a sneer. "What kind of joke is this?" I placed the deed carefully on the table, smoothing it with one manicured finger. "No joke, Victoria. I own this house, along with a few other things you might want to know about." "That's impossible," she sputtered, her voice rising. "We sold to Sterling Properties." "Indeed you did," I smiled, remembering how easy it had been to create that particular shell company. "Would you like to know who owns Sterling Properties? Here's a hint. She's standing right in front of you." The twins stopped their snickering. Marcus nearly choked on his wine, while Sophia's carefully contoured face went pale. My father sat frozen, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Perhaps he had, in a way. I'd never looked more like my mother than in that moment. "Robert." Victoria turned to my father, her voice shrill. "Do something." My father picked up the deed with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the document. 20 years in real estate had taught him enough to recognize an authentic deed when he saw one. "It's real," he whispered. "But how? How did your pathetic stepdaughter manage this?" I finished for him, pulling out a chair, the head chair, Victoria's precious throne. "The same way Mom would have. Carefully, intelligently, and with a lot of patience." I sat down, enjoying the way Victoria flinched at the mention of my mother. "You see, while you were busy teaching Marcus and Sophia how to spend money, Mom taught me how to make it. And protect it." Our relatives sat in uncomfortable silence, plates of turkey growing cold as the drama unfolded. Aunt Claire, who had arrived just in time, couldn't hide her proud smile. "This is ridiculous," Victoria snapped, desperation creeping into her voice. "Robert and I have other properties, other investments." "You mean like the beach house in Hampton?" I interrupted, pulling out another document. "Foreclosed last week. Or perhaps the stock portfolio you gambled away on those high-risk trades. The ones you hid from Dad." Victoria's face went from red to white in record time. "How do you know about?" "I know everything, Victoria. Every bad investment, every hidden account, every desperate attempt to cover your gambling habits. Did you really think nobody would notice you remortgaging the house 3 times? My father's head snapped up. 3 times? Victoria, you said it was just once for the twins' college fund." "Oh, Dad," I sighed, almost feeling sorry for him. "The twins' trust funds were emptied last year. Victoria used the money to cover her losses in that cryptocurrency scheme." Marcus and Sophia jumped to their feet simultaneously. "What?" Sophia screeched. "Our trust funds are gone? Mom, you promised that money was safe." Marcus added, his face turning an interesting shade of purple. Victoria stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "You're lying. You're just trying to turn my family against me." Your family. My voice cut through her hysteria like a steel blade. Interesting choice of words. Because legally, as of last month, I own controlling interest in every property and investment the Harrisons have. Including, I pulled out one final document, all of your outstanding debts. The room erupted into chaos. Sophia burst into tears, mascara running down her cheeks. Marcus started yelling about his trust fund. Victoria launched into a series of increasingly desperate denials. Our relatives began whispering among themselves, phones appearing to record the drama. Only my father remained silent, staring at me with a mixture of shock, shame, and something else, recognition. Emily, he whispered, and I knew he wasn't talking to me. He was seeing my mother in every line of my face, every calculated move I'd made. You're just like her. Yes, I agreed softly. I am. And maybe if you'd stood up for me all these years, things would be different. Victoria suddenly lunged for the documents, but I was faster. Don't bother, I said calmly. These are just copies. The originals are safe with my lawyers. What do you want? She finally asked, defeat creeping into her voice. Money? Revenge. I stood up slowly, looking around the table at the feast she'd prepared. First, I want Maria to join us for dinner. She's worked here for 15 years, and I've never seen her invited to sit at this table. Maria, who had been hovering nervously in the kitchen doorway, looked startled. I smiled at her encouragingly. Please, Maria. Your family too. As Maria hesitantly took a seat, I continued. Second, I'm implementing some changes. Victoria, you have 24 hours to pack your personal belongings. The house needs renovations and you won't be living here during them. Or after. You can't throw us out. Victoria shrieked. We'll sue. With what money? What lawyer? I asked mildly. Besides, I'm not throwing everyone out. Dad can stay if he wants. So can the twins, provided they get jobs and start paying rent. My father looked up sharply. You'd let me stay? Mom loved you, I said simply. And despite everything, you're still my father. But things will be different now. I turned back to Victoria. You have two choices. Leave quietly with the small settlement my lawyers have prepared, or I can start proceedings to recover the money you embezzled from the family accounts. The police are quite interested in some of your more creative accounting. Victoria collapsed into her chair, defeat finally settling over her like a heavy cloak. The perfect family image she'd cultivated for so long had shattered completely. Why now? She asked, her voice small. Why wait all these years? I picked up my mother's picture from my bag, the one Victoria had tried to throw away years ago. Mom taught me that timing is everything. In business and in life. You spent years trying to erase her, trying to push me into the background. But she prepared me for this moment before she died. Looking around the table, I addressed our shell-shocked audience. Dinner is served. Maria, would you like to say grace? As Maria led the prayer, I caught Aunt Claire's eye. She raised her glass slightly, acknowledging the completion of a plan set in motion 15 years ago. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Victoria moved out, taking only what she could prove she'd bought with her own money, surprisingly little as it turned out. The twins, faced with the reality of their empty trust funds, actually found jobs. Not great ones, but it was a start. My father, once he got over the shock, began the long process of making amends. He hung Mom's pictures back up, told me stories about their early days together, and actually listened when I explained how I'd built my own investment empire. Your mother would be proud, he said one evening as we sorted through old family photos Victoria had hidden away. Not just of the business success, but of how you handled everything. Even throwing your wife out? I asked, genuinely curious. He was quiet for a moment. Victoria, she wasn't good for any of us. I was too weak to see it, or maybe I just didn't want to. But Emily raised you to be strong enough to fix my mistakes. The house underwent a transformation. The cold, showroom-perfect aesthetic Victoria had insisted on was replaced with warmth and comfort. Maria's position was upgraded from housekeeper to house manager, with a substantial raise and benefits. The biggest change, though, was in the family dynamic. Sunday dinners became a regular tradition, with everyone sitting at the main table, including Maria and her family. The twins, stripped of their sense of entitlement, slowly became more tolerable. My father, freed from Victoria's influence, remembered how to laugh. As for Victoria, she eventually moved to Phoenix with a distant cousin. Sometimes she tries to contact the twins for money, but they've learned their lesson about her manipulation. Last week I found Mom's old briefcase in the attic, still filled with her notes and plans. Among them was a letter I hadn't seen before, dated just days before her death. "My dearest Sarah," it read, "remember that true power isn't in what you own but in how you use it. I've given you the tools to protect yourself, but how you wield them will define who you are. Choose wisdom over vengeance, growth over destruction. And always keep a seat at your table for those who others would banish to the kitchen." I took her words to heart. The house isn't just mine now. It's a home for everyone who Victoria tried to exclude. Every holiday, every celebration, every simple Sunday dinner is a reminder that family isn't about perfection or appearances. It's about making room at the table for everyone. Sometimes late at night I think I can smell Mom's perfume in the hallway. In those moments I know she'd approve of how her legacy was used, not to destroy but to rebuild something better. The deed to the house hangs framed in my study now, next to Mom's picture. They remind me daily that the best revenge isn't about making others small, but about growing big enough to lift others up with you. Even the kitchen where I spent so many lonely meals has been transformed. The wall between it and the dining room was removed, creating one large, welcoming space where no one is ever made to feel less than family. Because in the end, that's what Mom taught me. When you own the house, you get to decide who belongs at the table. And in my house, everyone belongs.